The Bosnian Crisis of 1908–09, also known as the Annexation Crisis of the First Balkan Crisis, erupted when on 6 October 1908, Austria-Hungary announced the annexation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, territories formerly within the sovereignty of the Ottoman Empire. This unilateral action, timed to coincide with Bulgaria's declaration of independence from the Ottoman Empire, sparked protestations from all the great powers and Austria-Hungary's Balkan neighbours, Serbia and Montenegro. In April 1909, the Treaty of Berlin was amended to reflect the fait accompli and bring the crisis to an end. The crisis permanently damaged relations between Austria-Hungary on one hand and Serbia, Italy and the Russian Empire on the other. The Italian historian Luigi Albertini regarded it as laying the grounds for World War I. Although the crisis ended with what appeared to be a total Austro-Hungarian diplomatic victory, Russia became determined not to back down again and hastened its military build-up. Austrian-Serbian relations became permanently stressed. Background: the mid-1870s witnessed a series of violent rebellions against Ottoman rule in the Balkans, and equally violent and repressive responses from the Turks. The Russian Tsar Alexander II, wanting to intervene against the Ottomans, sought and obtained an agreement with Austria-Hungary. In the Budapest Conventions of 1877, the two powers agreed that Russia would annex Bessarabia, and Austria-Hungary would observe a benevolent neutrality toward Russia in the pending war with the Turks. As compensation for this support, Russia agreed to Austria-Hungary's annexation of Bosnia-Herzegovina. Shortly thereafter, the Russians declared war and, after a few setbacks, drove the Turks relentlessly back to within a few miles of Istanbul. What stopped the Russians from driving the Turks completely out of Europe was the willingness of the other great powers, particularly Britain and Austria-Hungary, to enforce an earlier treaty, the London Straits Convention of 1841, which stated that the Straits of Constantinople would be closed to warships during time of war. This had the effect of bottling up the Russian fleet in the Black Sea, but would be worthless if Russian troops gained control of the straits by land. After the victory in the war, the Russians then imposed the Treaty of San Stefano on the Ottomans, which, in part, reneged on pledges made in the Budapest Convention and declared that Bosnia-Herzegovina would be jointly occupied by Russian and Austrian troops. The Treaty of San Stefano was overturned by the 1878 Treaty of Berlin. Under Article 29, Austria-Hungary received special rights in the Ottoman Empire's provinces of Bosnia-Herzegovina and the Sanjak of Novi Pazar. Article 25 stated, "The provinces of Bosnia and Herzegovina shall be occupied and administered by Austria-Hungary," and continued, "Austria-Hungary reserves the right to maintain garrisons and to have military and trading roads over the whole area of that portion of the ancient Vilayet of Bosnia." The Sanjak of Novi Pazar separated Montenegro from Serbia and prevented the geographic and political union of these two states, which were often closely aligned. The Austrian occupation of the Sanjak was also significant because it provided Austria-Hungary with a staging area for possible future expansion towards the Aegean port of Salonika in Ottoman-controlled Macedonia. Bosnia and Herzegovina was populated by Bosniaks, Serbs and Croats. Austria-Hungary exercised its rights, taking firm control of Bosnia-Herzegovina and jointly occupying the Sanjak of Novi Pazar together with the Ottoman Empire. The Treaty of Berlin allowed for sole Austrian occupation of Bosnia-Herzegovina, but did not specify a final disposition of the provinces. This omission was addressed in the Three Emperors League Treaty of 1881, where both Germany and Russia endorsed Austria's right to annex Bosnia-Herzegovina. However, by 1897, under the new Tsar, Nicholas II, the Russian imperial government had managed, again, to withdraw its support for Austrian annexation of Bosnia-Herzegovina. The Russian Foreign Minister, Count Michael Muraviev, stated that an Austrian annexation of Bosnia-Herzegovina would raise an extensive question requiring special scrutiny. In 1903, a coup in Serbia brought in a new pro-Russian Karađorđević dynasty and shifted political power to elements widely interested in expansion into Bosnia. These Serbs wanted to take over the Sanjak of Novi Pazar and Bosnia-Herzegovina from the Austro-Hungarians. Relations between Serbia and Austria-Hungary gradually deteriorated. However, Russia's ability to support Serbia was greatly reduced following military humiliation in the 1905 Russo-Japanese War and the ensuing internal unrest. By 1907, Austro-Hungarian Foreign Minister Alois Aehrenthal began formulating a plan to solidify Austria-Hungary's position towards Serbia through annexation of Bosnia-Herzegovina. His opportunity came in the form of a letter from Russian Foreign Minister Alexander Izvolsky and a subsequent meeting at Bucklau Castle in Moravia, Austria-Hungary. Bucklau bargain. Exchange of letters. On the 2nd of July 1908, Russian Foreign Minister Alexander Izvolsky sent a letter to Austro-Hungarian Foreign Minister Alois Aehrenthal and proposed a discussion of reciprocal changes to the 1878 Treaty of Berlin in favor of the Russian interest in the Straits of Constantinople and Austro-Hungarian interests in the annexation of Bosnia-Herzegovina and the Sanjak of Novi Pazar. On the 14th of July, Aehrenthal responded with guarded acceptance of the proposed discussions. On the 10th of September, after long and complex discussions within the imperial government discussing the Izvolsky proposals to Austria-Hungary, Aehrenthal outlined a slightly different set of counter-proposals to him. He proposed that in exchange for a friendly Russian attitude when Austria-Hungary annexed Bosnia-Herzegovina, Austria-Hungary would then withdraw its troops from the Sanjak. The letter then went on to offer to discuss, as a separate matter, the Straits question on a friendly basis. Aehrenthal proposed that should agreement on Bosnia-Herzegovina be reached, his government would not, should the Russians subsequently propose to assert a right of the Black Sea Fleet to both use and protect their access to the Mediterranean through the Bosphorus, automatically decide with the other powers to support collectively the Ottoman Empire's opposition to such a proposal. Meeting at Bucklau on the 16th of September, Izvolsky and Aehrenthal met face-to-face at Bucklau Castle. No minutes were taken during these private meetings, which lasted a total of 6 hours. Izvolsky accepted the responsibility to write up the conclusions of the meeting and forward them to Aehrenthal. On the 21st of September, Aehrenthal wrote to Izvolsky asking for this document, to which Izvolsky replied 2 days later that the document had been sent to the Tsar for approval. This document, if it ever existed, has never been produced. Aehrenthals' version of the agreement. By Aehrenthals' account given by Albertini, Izvolsky agreed that Russia would maintain a friendly and benevolent attitude if Austria-Hungary were to annex Bosnia-Herzegovina. Reciprocally, should Russia move to open the straits to single ships of war, Austria-Hungary would maintain a benevolent attitude. The two agreed that a likely consequence of the annexation was that Bulgaria, which was de facto independent since 1878, would declare its formal independence from the Ottoman Empire. Austria-Hungary would offer no territorial concessions to Serbia or Montenegro, but if they supported the annexation, then Austria-Hungary would not oppose Serbian expansion in the Balkans, and would support the Russian demand to revise Article 29 of the Treaty of Berlin, which restricted Montenegrin sovereignty. The parties agreed that these changes could receive sanction after negotiation with the Porte and the powers, but there would be no more talk of Bosnia-Herzegovina. Annexation would probably take place at the beginning of October. The original of Arendthl's account has not been found, and so historians have had to make do with an undated office copy of the document, Izvolsky's version. On the 30th of September, Austria-Hungary informed Izvolsky, who was in Paris at the time, that the annexation would take place on the 7th of October. On the 4th of October, Izvolsky prepared a report at the request of the British ambassador to France, Francis Bertie. Izvolsky stated that his position was that annexation was a matter to be settled between the signatories to the Treaty of Berlin, with the compensation of Austro-Hungarian withdrawal from the Sanjak of Novi Pazar. Russia would not consider the annexation as reason to go to war, but Russia and other governments would insist on changes to the treaty favorable to themselves, including opening the straits, Bulgarian independence, territorial concessions to Serbia, and abolition of restrictions on Montenegrin sovereignty under Article 29. Bertie told British Foreign Minister Grey that he felt Izvolsky was not being completely honest about the context whereby these understandings had come to be reached through his diplomacy. Annexation. On the 6th of October, the day after Bulgaria declared its independence from the Ottoman Empire, Emperor Franz Joseph announced to the people of this Ottoman territory his determination to recognize and grant them an autonomous and constitutional regime, under his authority as their annexing sovereign. The following day, Austria-Hungary announced its withdrawal from the Sanjak of Novi Pazar. Bulgarian independence and the Bosnian annexation were not covered by the Treaty of Berlin and set off a flurry of diplomatic protests and discussions. Protests and compensations. Serbia mobilized its army, and on the 7th of October the Serbian Crown Council demanded that the annexation be reversed, or, failing that, Serbia should receive compensation, which it defined on the 25th of October as a strip of land across the northernmost portion of the Sanjak of Novi Pazar. In the end, these demands were rejected. Serbia took control of the Sanjak after Balkan Wars. Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire protested Bulgaria's declaration of independence with more vigor than the annexation of Bosnia-Herzegovina, which it had no practical prospects of governing. A boycott of Austro-Hungarian goods and shops did occur, inflicting commercial losses of over 100 million kronen on Austria-Hungary. On the 26th of February, Austria-Hungary settled the matter in a treaty. Austria-Hungary agreed to pay the Ottomans 2.2 million Ottoman lira for the public land in Bosnia-Herzegovina. Bulgarian independence could not be reversed. France, Britain, Russia and Italy. The annexation and Bulgarian declaration were viewed as violations of the Treaty of Berlin. France, Britain, Russia and Italy therefore were in favor of a conference to consider the matter. German opposition and complex diplomatic maneuvering as to the location, nature and preconditions of the conference delayed and ultimately scuttled it. Instead, the powers reached agreement on amendments to the treaty through consultations between capitals. Italy expected compensations in the areas of Italia Irredenta, ruled by Austria-Hungary, in exchange for its recognition of the annexation of Bosnia-Herzegovina, as was agreed upon in the Triple Alliance treaties with Austria-Hungary. However, this did not happen, and this became one of the reasons for Italy to break its alliance with Austria-Hungary in 1915. The mutual compensation clause was first included in Article 1 from the Italian-Austrian agreement added to the 1887 version of the Triple Alliance Treaty, then reproduced in Article 7 of the 1891 version of the Triple Alliance Treaty, and finally in Article 7 of the 1909 and of the 5th of December 1912 versions of the same treaty. However, if, in the course of events, the maintenance of the status quo in the regions of the Balkans or of the Ottoman coasts and islands in the Adriatic and in the Aegean Sea should become impossible, and if, whether in consequence of the action of a third power or otherwise, Austria-Hungary or Italy should find themselves under the necessity of modifying it by a temporary or permanent occupation on the part, this occupation shall take place only after a previous agreement between the two powers, based upon the principle of a reciprocal compensation for every advantage, territorial or other, which each of them might obtain beyond the present status quo, and giving satisfaction to the interests and well-founded claims of the two parties. Russia and Serbia backed down. British opposition to amending the Treaty of Berlin with respect to the Straits left Russia empty-handed, and therefore Izvolsky and the Tsar regarded the annexation under Aehrenthals' maneuvers as made in bad faith. Cognizant of Aehrenthals' rumored Jewish heritage, Izvolsky exploded, remarking, "The dirty Jew has deceived me. He lied to me. He bamboozled me. That frightful Jew." To bring Izvolsky to heel, Austria-Hungary threatened to release and then ultimately began leaking documents in which, over the course of the previous 30 years, Russia had agreed that Austria-Hungary had a free hand to do as it liked with Bosnia-Herzegovina and the Sanjak of Novi Pazar. These documents were an embarrassment to Russia, especially with regard to its relations with Serbia. Tsar Nicholas II wrote to Emperor Franz Joseph and accused Austria-Hungary of betraying a confidence, and relations between the two countries were permanently damaged. Under Germany's advice, Austria-Hungary kept in confidence the 2nd of July and the 23rd of September correspondence from Izvolsky to Aehrenthal, and these were a continued threat to Izvolsky's position if Russia did not firmly and publicly accept amendment of Article 25 of the Treaty of Berlin to accept the annexation. On the 22nd of March, Germany put Russia on the spot, demanding that Russia give a clear and unequivocal yes or no as to whether it committed to accept this amendment. Failure to give a positive reply would cause Germany to withdraw from the diplomatic discussions and let things take the course. Under such pressure, Izvolsky caved and advised the cabinet to accept the amendment of Article 25 for fear that otherwise Austria would be free to act against Serbia. The cabinet agreed. On the 23rd of March, the Tsar accepted the decision and communicated the decision to German ambassador to Russia Portales. Britain, however, was not quite ready to acquiesce and stated that it would do so only once the Serbian question had been settled in a pacific manner. France fell in line behind Britain. On the 26th of March, Austria-Hungary provided Britain with the negotiated text of Serbia's March Declaration committing Serbia to accept the annexation. It ran, "Serbia recognizes that she has not been injured in her right by the fait accompli created in Bosnia-Herzegovina, and that consequently she will conform to such decision as the powers shall take in regard to Article 25 of the Treaty of Berlin." submitting to the advice of the great powers. Serbia undertakes already now to abandon the attitude of protest and opposition which she has maintained in regard to the annexation since last. Ottoman undertakes further to change the course of her present policy towards Austria-Hungary to live henceforward with the latter on a footing of good neighbourliness. Conformable to these declarations and confident of the pacific intentions of Austria-Hungary, Serbia will reduce her army to the position of spring 1908 as regards its organization, its distribution and its effectives. She will disarm and disband her volunteers and bands and will prevent the formation of new units of irregulars on its territories. The next day Austria-Hungary asked for Britain's firm assurance that once the negotiations with Serbia were complete, Britain would accept the amendment of Article 25. Without such assurance, Austria-Hungary stated it would break off negotiations with Serbia. Later that day Austria-Hungary decided to partially mobilize its armed forces. On the 28th of March Britain committed as requested. On the 31st of March Serbia made its formal declaration of acceptance to Austria-Hungary representing a complete Serbian climb down. The crisis was over. The great powers signed the amendments to the Treaty of Berlin in the various capitals from the 7th of April to the 19th of April. A little over a year later, as a result of this diplomatic defeat, Izvolsky was demoted and made ambassador to France. He was permanently embittered against Ehrenthal and the Central Powers. The Russian diplomat and newspaperman De Shelking relates Izvolsky's political downfall. In the salons of Petrograd he was given the sobriquet Prince of the Bosphorus. In his conceit, Izvolsky could not see he was being mocked.